All right, hey, I'm Mike. I'm the one that doesn't really read comic books, but I do like watching the movies quite a bit.
And I am Jarvis. I'm the one who does read comic books, and I do also like to watch the movies quite a bit.
All right, so we're going to talk about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, right? We're going to do the whole
Yep, the
series,
whole thing, the whole
right?
series. Yep, whole series in an hour. We'll see how it goes.
Right. Okay, yeah, I've got episode titles here. So the first one's New World Order.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
Okay.
good title.
hmm
And it kind of starts out with a really good fight scene in a plane, and the bad guys are French. You don't see
Yep.
French bad guys a whole lot. Does that come from the comic books, or is that just something they did because they had the actor GSP?
Well, if you remember, yeah, if you remember the actor, the guy who was like doing all that, like he's from the Winter Soldier in the movie Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Do
I
you
do
remember
not.
that?
Okay.
All right. So if you watched Captain America and the Winter Soldier, Cap jumps off a Queen Jet into the ocean, boards a ship, and takes out a bunch of terrorists. And one of the terrorists is the Leaper. He's like the French guy. So he's actually a comic book character called the Leaper. His costume's
Okay.
ridiculous, but he does a lot of kicks and
Right.
stuff. And then Captain America and they fought on the boat in the Winter Soldier, and he was actually pretty tough for Cap to beat. And you gotta remember, Captain America has like super serum in his body, so he's stronger than most
Right.
people. But that guy was giving Cap a run for his money. And it's interesting that they start Falcon and Winter Soldier with that same character because it's like you anticipate that Falcon and the Leaper are going to fight, and that's going to be like a test to see if the Falcon can be as good as Steve Rogers. So it's actually kind of interesting that they did that. But the Leaper character is from the comics 100%. But as far as like French bad guys, not often. No.
Okay. All right. Cool. Yeah. So there's Torres. That's Falcon's support guy for this first mission. He gets a lot
hmm
of screen time. So I'm wondering if that means he's anybody we should know from the comics.
No, that he's probably that. So there's a pretty good gap between my comic book memory between I would say 2004 and
Yeah.
present. But no, like Torres isn't like he's just a young like military
Okay.
guy. Um, yeah, there is a bunch of Avengers called the Young
hmm
Avengers that could come up. It's actually interesting. When we get to Isaiah Bradley, we'll talk more about that. But Torres wasn't involved in
Okay.
that.
All right. Cool.
And I'm saying, and I am going to preface if I'm wrong and you're listening to this podcast, send us a tweet or something and or a message, and I will correct myself, or we'll talk about that
That's
later. Because I totally could be wrong. So it's okay for
all
me to
right.
be
Well,
wrong sometimes or all the
I'm
time.
glad you mentioned that. The feedback. That's good. But maybe they're just setting him up for like a future movie too, with all the screen time he's getting. So
Yeah, yeah, and I also think like if you look at the movie itself and you look at so to back up a little bit, the comics, Marvel Comics began bringing in young characters and minority characters and women characters into the comics heavily around 2005, 2006. And if you look at the MCU, they do a lot of that as well. It's like they just don't want like a bunch of white guys running around in superhero
hmm
costumes. So to have like a Latinx young military guy talking to Sam is I think it's pretty important. I think it's like not signaling anything, but it's like, hey, we have a multicultural world, and it's important to see that. Like if you in that scene, um, Sam actually talks to a citizen, and I forget what country he's in, but he talks to him in his language, so he's speaking that language, and like it's just a sign that you have a very colored society, and like the tourist probably represents that more than anything.
Yeah. I also got like just Falcon speaking that guy's language is that he's not just a sidekick or some chump. Like he's really good at what he
Exactly. No.
does.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like just having him do that mission on his own, which was if you look at that action scene with the helicopters, it's pretty
Right.
intense. He's flying through the air, he's doing crazy acrobatics, and like there's a whole meme. I hate using that word, but there's a whole joke online that Sam Wilson can't fight.
hmm
Like Sam Wilson takes out two, maybe three helicopters in that fight
Right.
scene. Like multiple people in the helicopters, he saves a guy's life. Like I don't understand. Like I can't do that, and Captain America couldn't do that. Like
Yeah.
so Falcon can use his gear, and he knows how to fly. He knows how to do these things very well. And so like that set the show really set up that Sam in his own right is a hero, right? And so I think that was important for the show to do.
Okay. All right. So this episode ends with the reveal of the new Captain America, and the way they shot it just makes me think that we should know, or they want the audience to know who he is. Like, should we know who he is at this point? Like, does that come from back?
Yes, if you read if you read comic books, you definitely know. So there's a whole story. So I'll back up a little bit. So in about, I think around that late 70s, early 80s, Captain America had a fallout with the U.S. government. I think what happened was something happened, and Captain America actually saw a senator kill himself, and Captain America became very jaded and upset. I forget the details of it, but he stopped being Captain America and he just called himself the Captain. He still led the Avengers, but he didn't call himself Captain America anymore. He gave up the costume, and I think he kept the shield, but he might give the shield up too. So he actually changed his costume into a darker costume. And then John Walker, who he was first called the Super Patriot, and John Walker took some super soldier serum, or became it wasn't super soldier serum. That's really important. He became augmented, which means it was a different form. It was a different thing they did to him to make him stronger. And if you read the comic books, he got that ability from a guy named the Powerbroker, which is somebody, of course, you see later. Yeah. So John Walker and his sidekick Battlestar both become augmented, and it's actually him, Battlestar, and a couple other people all become augmented, and they become like a super patriot. Super. It's almost, if you think about it, I would say they're very keen to a lot of right wing political patriarch parties back that currently they were kind of had that ethos. It was like America first, we're super tough, America, we're awesome. So it went kind of against Captain America.
The ends justify the means type.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff. Mm-hmm. So at some time, the government gives John Walker the Captain America status. They give him the costume, and they give him the shield, and John Walker's Captain America for a while with his sidekick Battlestar. But then John Walker, I forget something happens. A group of people called the Watchdogs ends up killing his mom and dad, and I think he goes on a crazy spree and kills a bunch of them. But at some point, John Walker and Captain America have a fallout. So they just fight, and then Captain America takes back the shield and the mantle. And then John Walker, if you watch the end of the series, John Walker the government gives him the title of U.S. agent and gives him his own shield. And John Walker's been around comic books for a very long time. He's been in comic books since probably the early 80s. So what, 40, almost 40 years, which is really depressing.
Right. Yeah.
My God, jeez. He's been, and he's so you have to understand that at a certain point, comics, there became this like darker sort of thing going on in the late 80s, early 90s, and through the 90s, almost to the 2000s. Comics became a lot darker and a lot more violent, and the reason they did that was to get more people to read their comics. And there's one character you can blame for that, which is Wolverine. Kids were buying Wolverine comics like they couldn't stop. It was like candy to them. If Wolverine was on a cover or Wolverine was on anything, people bought it. And Marvel said, well, people like these dark characters, so they started doing that for almost all their characters. They made all their characters very dark, very violent, very angry, very. It was a darker time for Marvel. And so from Spider-Man to Daredevil to Captain America, it was always a darker version of them. And so for U.S. Agent, he was that darker version. Okay. And they kept him around for quite a bit. So yeah. So yeah, when John Walker in the TV show walked down the steps and looked at us with the shield, we all knew the story of who he was and what he was going to do. If you read comics, if you didn't read comics, you had no idea.
I had no idea. Didn't know what his name would be, but so you did. That's cool. So in this, you said that he got his augmentation from the Powerbroker, but it wasn't super soldier serum. In the TV show, he does get super soldier serum kind of from the Powerbroker, but it's like accidental and indirect. So that's they kind of took what was in the comics and remixed it a lot. That's cool. Okay. All right, so new episode. the Star Spangled Man, second episode. The Flagsmashers are kind of introduced in this episode. Are they from the comics? The name is a bad name in my opinion.
Yeah, no, the Flagsmashers were definitely in the comics. They were low key. Like they had to dig real deep to find them, but they are in the comics. They actually took. I forget what the original Flagsmashers were about, but they definitely took them and changed them a lot to make them fit the modern day. But yeah, they're from the comics.
Okay. And then, like a few times, androids, aliens, and wizards comes up in conversation. Like they call it the Big Three. Mm-hmm. That also feels like it could be something that came from the comics.
I don't remember that exact term, but it's funny they say that because androids, aliens, and wizards, that was them setting up. That was MCU setting up a few things. So first, androids calls back to WandaVision, of course, right? With they want to keep everybody remembering WandaVision because technically this is really interesting. Technically, there is a vision at that time period alive and flying around. Like, did you watch WandaVision?
Yeah, I watched WandaVision.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, so at the end you had the White Vision. We could talk about WandaVision all day. I don't want to do that. But at the end, White Vision flies off. He says, "I am the Vision," and flies off. And that had a lot to do with a lot of different Avengers stuff. It's pretty heavy. Yeah. But so they call out androids, so they're calling out to Vision. Aliens, if you watch the end of WandaVision, we understand that the Skrulls are walking around doing some stuff with Nick Fury, and there's been a lot of hints that Captain Marvel 2 is going to deal with aliens, and they've already announced a Secret Invasion series with Nick Fury and some others. That's going to be with Secret Invasion is a whole different thing. I don't want to get into it, but it's a whole thing. So anyway, and then Wizards is going to be, there's going to be a movie with Doctor Strange and Wanda Maximoff about Doctor Strange and Multiverse. So I think basically what that was just like a more of an MCU call out, trying to get people in their heads to think about what they've already established and what they're going to move on in the future.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, it just seemed a little weird the way they were throwing it around a few times. Okay, cool. Is Redwing new? I don't remember that from any of the previous movies.
Redwing was in Captain America: Civil War. He did have that little robot did have a couple different scenes in the movie in the Captain America: Civil War. But this is gonna blow your mind. Redwing is technically in the comic books, he's a bird. And and Sam Wilson can telepathically talk to the bird. There's a lot going on. We'll talk about Sam Wilson in a little bit, but so apparently somehow I don't really know why when Sam Wilson was first introduced, the Red Skull gave Sam Wilson telepathic powers to talk to birds. And I'm not 100% sure why, but he does have a sidekick called Redwing that is an actual bird that flies around with him and they communicate telepathically. It's a whole thing.
Okay, that is a very strange superpower.
It is, but it's also like, how can I put this? It's not strange when you read the comic books. It's like, oh, Sam Wilson, cause how Sam Wilson flies is sort of ambiguous, but it's technology. It's actually, we'll talk about that in a little bit, probably, hopefully, but it's never really clear. Because you see people fly around in comic books, and we don't have a really science thing to explain it. But with Sam Wilson, it's always been technology. But it is kind of strange that for somebody who uses tech to fly, he has a telepathic connection to a bird. So it's kind of strange. Yeah, it is strange, Mike.
I think this is a good change, having a drone instead. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. So at the near the end of this episode, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, they go to Baltimore, I think it is. And there's just like a couple of kids on the street, and one of the kids calls Falcon Black Falcon, and there's a whole exchange about that. Is that a reference to the comics, or is it just a joke?
That's a reference to Black Lightning. So if you look at Black Lightning from DC Comics, there's a character called Black Lightning, right? Because he's black, but he has lightning powers. And there is it's actually really interesting. It's a very small thing that I'm very surprised Marvel did. There's a lot of people who would call Falcon Black Falcon. Like people who read the comics would say that's Black Falcon. But his actual name is Falcon. I wrote an article about this, about Black Sidekicks and comics. I'll send a link to you. that kind of runs it down. And while I was writing this article a few years ago, I had to look up to see if he's actually called Black Falcon or Falcon, and it's actually called
Right,
Falcon.
okay.
So that was the exchange. That was kind of a really deep dive into like a lot of like Black sidekick stuff, because like it's like Black Falcon. Not maybe not Black Falcon. Black Lightning is character is one. There's a few others. And so it's interesting when Sam says, "I'm not Black Falcon, I'm Falcon." That says a lot. That's like, that's saying something about his character. It's also digging into some real nuanced comic book stuff that only people who read comic books heavily can get into. Because I'm almost pretty sure that in the comics, at some point, people call him Black Falcon. So again, it's really interesting that he brought that up. It's a joke, but it's also doing some interesting things as far as like the nuances of comic books. It's really fascinating. I could talk about that just all day long.
Okay.
I won't, but it's really
we'll
fascinating.
put the link that you mentioned in the show notes so people can read that. That's cool. Right.
Okay, great.
All right, new ep, Powerbroker. Next episode. It's the third in the series.
Okay.
So this might be a bad guess on my part, but I'm guessing that the GRC is not from the comics because it's because of the blip. And from as far as I know, the blip is only the Marvel Cinematic Universe thing. That never happened in the comics.
Incorrect. Okay. The blip does happen in the comics, but it doesn't happen the way they do it there. We are eventually going to do Infinity Wars and Endgame, correct?
Right, yeah.
If we do those, then I'll go way more into it. But what Thanos does snap his fingers in the comics, and he does erase half of all life in the universe.
All right, cool. I didn't know that.
But the GRC is definitely just for MCU.
Okay, so the GRC is just for MCU, but the blip did happen. Okay.
Yeah.
Right, cool. That's good to know. That's kind of surprising to me that, like, because the blip, for me, somebody that doesn't read comic books, was a pretty big surprise.
Oh, dude. I can't. When we get into Infinity War, it's the whole thing. I got a lot of stuff to talk about with that. We're just doing Falcon and Winter Soldier, so I'm trying. We gotta stay on time. So
we got 3 more episodes to get through after this one. So
yeah. So we're doing good on time, but the blip does happen in the comics. It's very interesting, and that's not. And to be honest with you, what Thanos does in the Infinity War is far more tragic in the comics than it is in the movies.
More tragic in the comics than in the movies.
Yeah, wait, it's like it's heavy, dude. It's heavy. Yeah. But anyway,
we'll have to get into that in a future episode. Cool. All right. Just is there anything you want to tell us about Zemo? I know that he was in previous movies, but I don't. Yeah. So Zemo is a Baron. So Zemo is. You gotta understand. So what happened around the late '90s, early 2000s? Kurt Brunswick created a comic called Thunderbolts. And Thunderbolts was these new superheroes that came. Like, it's such a long story, Mike. I can't even get into it right now. But at a certain point, a lot of superheroes in Marvel left the universe and were just kind of considered dead. And the Marvel universe didn't have a lot of heroes. And so these Thunderbolts showed up, these new characters. But they were in secret villains that were masquerading as heroes to get the world to trust them. And the leader was Baron Zemo. No one cared about Baron Zemo until the Thunderbolts comics really came into play. And because it was just a massive success. It was massive success. And Zemo is considered super smart, super real good fighter, real cunning. And so the MCU did okay with him. Mm-hmm. They could have done so much more. And the idea that Zemo hates superheroes is strictly an MCU thing. He doesn't really have that ideology in the comics. His ideology is, I'm smarter than everybody else and I want to rule the world. Okay.
But
I like what they did with him in the MCU. Like, that's a cool.
Yeah, they did some. Yeah, they did some good work with him, I think. I kind of wish he was a little more cunning and a little more interesting, but he's okay for what they did. The purple mask was kind of fun. I wish we could get more into why he has that purple mask, because in the comics he has that purple mask, of course, and he's considered a really good swordsman. in the comics, but in the MCU they didn't really explain why he's wearing the purple mask. But yeah, no, so Zemo's a whole thing. I liked how they handle him in the MCU, but I wish they would have done a lot more with Zemo. I'll be honest.
Yeah, I figured the purple mask thing was like a callback to the comics because
Mm-hmm.
it kind of it features very lightly, but there's like I think at least three specific places where it shows up, and you can tell it's kind of a wink to comic book readers.
Yeah.
All right. So while this show was going on, people were talking about it on Twitter. I've seen people mention that Madripoor is like really big in the comics. I know absolutely nothing about it. What's up with that place?
Madripoor is straight from the X-Men. So this was one of the first places from the X-Men comics that's featured in the MCU. So they're definitely going to do X-Men stuff at some point. We don't know when, but Marvel could do it at any time and people would flip out. But we know that Disney and Marvel has bought the rights from the X-Men from whoever they had from. I think it was Sony, and now they can do X-Men comic. They can do X-Men movies. Marvel can. So at some point, X-Men are going to have to integrate into Marvel, which was why the WandaVision was so interesting, because they had the actor who played Quicksilver from the X-Men movies play Quicksilver. It's a long thing, blah, 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 nerd stuff. But anyway, Madripoor was a big place for Wolverine. So Wolverine was in Madripoor. He did a lot of Madripoor stuff. He had an eye patch. I think he was called Patch. I think that was his name. He called himself Patch when he was in Madripoor. But it's a definitely X-Men place. But it is almost exactly like they portrayed it in the comics. If you could take Madripoor from the comics and put it in MCU, they did a very good job at Madripoor. It's just like that. It was always dark, lawless. So they did a really good, and I'm very excited about Madripoor. They should do more stuff for that. That was a great place. They did a really good job, and everybody got excited because that's a real place that's mostly mentioned in the X-Men comics. That's now in the MCU. It's there now. We have it, and so that's going to be more places to build on for X-Men comic stuff when they start doing it in the movies.
All right, cool. That's all I had for that episode. So the next one up is The Whole World is Watching. A great title for this episode, based on what happens at the end of it. So Carly's elderly friend, Danya Madani, they say that name a few times, and the way they say it seems like it's a significant name that maybe people that read the comic books would recognize.
I did. You know what? I should have Googled that before, but I never heard of it. It's not something significant. It might be a character who's like a very small character somewhere, but it's not a big deal.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, maybe a listener knows what that means and can tell us about it.
Hey, listeners, if you have heard anything, but I think it'd be fun to have the listeners do that. So if I'm wrong on that, please let us know, because I could be totally wrong on that.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so there weren't a whole lot of questions that I had from this episode, because it's basically just it's a play of watching John Walker and how much of a jerk he can be.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So that's when Battlestar gets killed, right?
Yeah, and that's what sets up the ending of this episode.
Yeah, so if you look at Battlestar, like in movie tropes, like science fiction movies and other movies, the black actor dying is like a thing. Like Jurassic Park, like what's his face, Samuel L. Jackson gets killed. The black actor usually gets. Yeah, the black actor usually gets killed in these movies, and so by killing him, it's sort of like doing some interesting stuff with the trope of the black sidekick. Like the black side, this is going to be a short side, but the black sidekick in comics is really interesting, because if you look at Iron Man, he has a black sidekick, which was Rhodey, right? If you look at Captain America, he has a black sidekick, it's the Falcon. If you look at, there's probably a couple of other words. Oh yeah, if you look at Green Lantern, he has a black sidekick, which is Jim, I forget his name, but he's a black sidekick as well, like a black Green Lantern. These black characters didn't have the support for their own books, but Marvel and other comic book companies knew that black people needed somebody to identify to. So it's like, okay, here is these sidekicks that work alongside these white superheroes. And to have him killed is sort of like calling back to the black tropes being killed. It's doing some interesting things with storytelling, and it's also allowing John Walker to go crazy and kill the actor, the bad guy at the end. But it's also like sort of like showing how Marvel has marginalized black characters in the comics before, using them as like tropes and using them as just like as a can fodder, and seeing that now allows us to talk about that in the show. And also, it's almost like you have Falcon and the Winter Soldier working together, and then you have John Walker and the Battlestar working together. And John Walker and Battlestar represent what Marvel used to be versus what Falcon and the Winter Soldier is now. It's very interesting what they did. I actually like the idea they killed him off like that, because it allows us to it allows some interesting emotional play, but it also allows us to have a conversation about what it means to be a black superhero, right? Like you're not just like a toss away person. And like it's interesting if we go forward a little bit to the end episode when the woman, that Carly, says that Battlestar didn't matter, right? And like, of course, like Black Lives Matter, and then like she says he doesn't matter. It's a lot going on. It's almost so much going on that you can't get your head around it completely. But they're doing some interesting things. And so so in the comics, Battlestar is still alive. He's still there. He's actually a super soldier. He has powers. He's not dead.
Right.
But it's really interesting. But John Walker does murder people in the comics.
Well,
and so
you said earlier that what sends him off in a rage in the comics is his parents getting killed.
Exactly.
And in this one, it's Battlestar getting killed.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, so at some point, these guys called the Watchdogs, which I think, and this is hold me to this. I think the Watchdogs are going to be the villains for any kind of next Captain America movie, because they are a right wing group, terrorist group. Okay. So I mean, if you look sadly in our society right now, right wing terrorist groups are a whole thing. So that'd be a really interesting thing for them to do.
It would. Yeah. Okay.
So I think that when John Walker murders that guy at the end, it is calling back to what happened to him in the comics.
Right. Yeah, and just like for the series, out of the two of those guys, Battlestar was the much more likable character for me.
He was interesting. Yeah,
and he was. It's almost like, this is a little maybe heady for me in a comic book movie, but Battlestar was almost like John Walker's conscious or morality.
Conscious. Yeah, no.
He was the positive influence, I guess, on John Walker. He kind of helped him. There was like one time where John Walker just wanted to go in blazing and take out Carly, and Battlestar kind of held him back. And now Battlestar's gone, so there's nobody holding John Walker back.
Yeah, we could, like, you're absolutely right. And I think that if John Walker hadn't taken the super soldier serum, John Walker wouldn't have been able to go toe to toe with those super soldiers. And that means that the reason why I think Carly went all out against Battlestar is because she was dealing with John Walker, who was so superpowered. So she had to like defend herself more than she normally would. So in a weird way, I think it was John Walker's fault. If he wouldn't have escalated, it wouldn't have been like that. But I mean, that's just kind of here, there. But that's just kind of to the side. But I do think that the death of Battlestar, I don't think it was good. But I think that it was handled well.
Right. Okay. All right. So that's it for that episode.
Right.
Second to last.
Wait.
Go ahead.
Wait. No, we'll get to that later. Go ahead.
All right. Second to last episode, Truth. All right. So who's the lady with the long name? Val, but don't call her Val.
Oh God. So I actually did some looking up on this before. Like Val, there's a character called Valerie. I forget her last name. She ran X Factor, which is okay.
This sounds like another X-Men tie-in.
It is. And I really need to get her name right. So give me like 3 seconds to find it real quick.
Yeah.
So
while you're doing that, I will say, I think this episode that we're talking about was the only one that had a post-credit scene.
No, there's two.
Oh, which was
the last episode had post-credit scene.
Oh, I did not. Well, did I?
Yeah, we'll talk. I'll get you to it.
Okay.
So in the comics, there's a character called Valerie Cooper. Val Cooper.
Yeah.
Val Cooper ran the X Factor. So at some point, the United States government needed a superhero team, but they didn't. They also wanted to reach out to mutants. So the U.S. government created X Factor, which was, let's see how nerdy I can get: Havoc, Multiple Man, Strong Man, Wolfsbane. Oh my God, keep going. Come on, you can do it. Polaris, Quicksilver was in there, and one more. Come on, you can do it. I forget the rest of them. Okay, and it was a superhero team that was led by Havoc, but Val Cooper was the handler. So she was in charge of making sure that the X Factor had assignments and stuff like that. The Val that they showed in the Winter Soldier isn't the same one. She doesn't have the same last name, but she does the same function. So basically it's the same person, unless they introduced a new Val, which I don't think so. But she acts the same way. So like, hey, I'm the boss. I'm in a secret government thing. So yeah, so she's gonna be around a while, and I think she's gonna do some interesting stuff. I'm glad they used Julia Dreyfus to do that. But yeah, Val's in the comics for sure.
Is there also somebody named Contessa or?
Yeah, but I think they might be conflating a couple characters. I could look into this. I'm sure someone out there knows more about this than I do. But I think that Marvel just wanted to give Julia Dreyfus a little bit of flair by giving her last names and stuff like that.
Right.
But it's definitely Val Cooper, 100%. That's who they're basing off of.
Okay. All right. Cool. You mentioned the name Isaiah Bradley earlier. I don't really have any questions about him. Maybe I should have.
I think our listeners need to know that Isaiah Bradley is from the comics, and in canon, that happened. There was a black Captain America before the original Captain America. Actually.
Oh wait, I did not. So I didn't pick up on him being a black Captain America.
But in the comics, he was a black Captain America. He had a shield, he had the suit, he had the whole thing.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah,
and so, that was before Steve Rogers.
I almost want to say yes.
Maybe not in the comics, but in like the timeline, it would be before Steve Rogers. Yeah,
so they put this out in the 90s, I think, or late 2000s. So, but they kind of rejiggered the can. But basically, I could be wrong on this, so somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. Basically, the U.S. government did tests on black soldiers to create the super soldier serum, and then Isaiah Bradley was the first Captain America, and he did some stuff before Steve. But his son, that young kid, I mean, like he actually has powers because of their genetic relationship,
right.
And he ends up becoming the superhero. He ends up becoming, I think, the Patriot or something like that.
Oh,
so actually, him being on the show, he could easily become a superhero at some point. So it's actually kind of cool they gave him prominence.
Cool. Okay. Is Isaiah Bradley's nurse someone we should know? He talks about how a nurse was the one that kind of took pity on him and broke him out. Okay, I didn't know if it was.
I didn't read this. I should go back. I didn't read these comics.
Yeah.
I know about them just because. But it might be tied back to the comics in that. But
for some reason, I don't know why. I was thinking maybe it was a Carter somewhere along the way that was his nurse. I don't know.
Maybe.
Okay. All right.
That would be interesting.
Okay, yeah. So the game of catch that Winter Soldier and Falcon are playing with the shield. So the way that was shot made it seem almost like they were, whoever caught it last when the scene ended was going to be the person that becomes the new Captain America. At least that's the way I was reading it. So that makes me wonder: was Winter Soldier ever Captain America in the comics?
So you've really never read these comics at all, have you?
No. The reason I've never read comics is I got into comic books a little bit when I was a kid, but the way I read them, I always spoil it for myself by reading panels ahead. So the format just doesn't work for me.
That's crazy because yes. So okay, so this was interesting. This is really interesting. We got time.
Okay.
For a long time, there was a running joke that the only superhero who's ever dead and stays dead is Bucky. That was the truth. When I started reading comics back in the late 80s, That was the truth. That was, everybody knew that they brought comic book characters back all the time, but they will never bring back Bucky. They never will, right? Because he's dead. He's been dead. And it's really interesting. Bucky sacrificed his life in order to save a bunch of people. He was on this ship or something, and he ends up sacrificing his life.
So wait, does that mean the Winter Soldier was never in the comics?
Well, no, he's definitely in the comics because it was very controversial. He shows back up. Okay. He shows up. The Winter Soldier shows up, and nobody knows who he is until it's. But I did. I was reading the comics, and I was like, they're going to make it. So, but he comes back as Bucky, and it ends up the Winter Soldier ends up being Bucky, and I just like lost it. I was like, you can't do this. You can't bring back Bucky. That's a rule, and I was very upset.
Yeah.
But I got over it, of course.
Yeah.
And at some point, Captain America dies. It's a long story. It involves time bullets. It doesn't make any sense. And the word time bullets is a thing. Don't worry about it. But then the Winter Soldier takes up the mantle, and he is Captain America. He does become Captain America for a little bit.
Okay.
But then he gives it up, and he gives it back to Steve Rogers. And then Steve Rogers loses his powers and gives it to Sam Wilson. So yeah, so it's actually interesting. I'm surprised. There's some tension in the show for viewers and between Sam Wilson and Bucky, because it's in canon that Bucky becomes Captain America. And I think a lot of us were worried that Bucky would just take the shield and he would be Captain America himself. He does say that he's going to do it himself, right? And so we were all nervous. Like, I was nervous that at some point they're going to have a falling out, and then Bucky takes the shield and becomes Captain America. But I'm glad they didn't do that. And that scene where they're going back and forth with the shield, I think they did a very good job, very briefly, bringing up the idea that the Winter Soldier could be Captain America, but he's not going to be. And I think they did a really good job with that. I really do.
Right.
Because it was definitely a place where they could have done that. They could have went there. I'm glad they didn't, but they could have.
That was a cool scene. All right, so this was the one post-credit scene I knew about at the end of Truth. And it's basically like a callback to Iron Man, I think, where you've got...
where John Walker's making his own shield?
John Walker's making his own shield. So it's almost like Iron Man, where, you know, Tony Stark is making the first Iron Man, and then also I think a post-credit scene where the Russian dude is doing some kind of construction in a lab. No, that's from Iron Man 2. It's in the middle of it's like the beginning of the movie where he's making his. I was thinking that was a post-credit scene too. Okay.
That's Whiplash.
Whiplash.
No, so like the shield. Let's stop and talk about the shield for a second. So the shield, Captain America's shield, was made by the U.S. government. It wasn't made by Tony Stark in the comics. The government made it.
But in the MCU, it was made by Tony Stark, right?
Yeah, in the MCU, it was made by Tony Stark's father.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but in the comics, it was made by the U.S. government, whoever that is. And the shield is part vibranium, part steel. So it's a steel vibranium alloy. In the movies, it's 100% vibranium.
Yeah, in the movies, they only talk about it being vibranium. So wait a second. Let me pause you for a second. All right, so
sure.
Val, the lady with the long name, tells John Walker that the shield doesn't really belong to the government. It's kind of a legal gray area or something.
Yeah.
Is that like a wink at the two different origins of the shield in the movies and the comics?
Yes, 100%. In the comics, that shield definitely belongs to the U.S. government, 100%. But it's in the movies, it is a gray area. And you know what? Even in the comics, I think it's a gray area. I think it's like no one really addresses who owns the shield. Like, and it's like nowhere. Captain America owns it. It's his, right? Because the government gave it to him. So yeah, in reality, nobody owns. Like Captain America owns that shield. He can give it to whoever he wants. And in the movies, if you're talking about the MCU, that shield, I'm not really sure exactly how it works as far as legal gray area, but if you watch the first Avenger, Captain America, the first Avenger, Tony Stark's father gives him the shield. But anyway,
okay.
In the comics, John Walker gets a shield too. I don't know if it's vibranium or not, because so you have to understand, in the comics, there's 2 different metals that are highly respected. Actually 3, but we'll just say 2 right now. Vibranium, which absorbs vibrations, and adamantium, which is technically the strongest metal on Earth. Okay. And everybody knows that Wolverine's bones are made of adamantium. Right. Adamantium has not been talked about in the MCU at all yet, and it probably will at some point. But the vibranium steel shield is supposed to be as strong as adamantium. So whenever you have characters carrying like vibranium shields or adamantium weapons, it's always kind of like, ooh, cool, right? It's just a cool factor. Mm-hmm. And the fact that John Walker is making his own shield as steel in his basement is like uncool. I mean, at the end of it, he throws his shield down and it's all broken and bent up because it, it's not as strong as the other shields.
Yeah.
So, but
the sound that it makes a really bad sound when it's getting thrown around.
It's like clang, clang. Yeah, it's actually interesting. It was like, oh, this shield's terrible. Where's the other shield?
Right.
Yeah, it's like, it's funny. They did a really good job with that. But in the comics, I think they give John Walker a shield. It probably is vibranium or some kind of hybrid at some point. But he has several shields he goes through over a course of time.
Okay.
The actual shield, Captain America's shield, that thing is as close to godlike as you could possibly get. Like if the MCU was going to explode and they had to build a time capsule, mm-hmm. Captain America's shield is going into that time capsule. Right. It's iconic. It's highly respected. Everybody knows it, and so it's super important, not just in the Captain America mythos, but in the MCU mythos as well.
It's like Mjolnir, Thor's hammer.
Yeah. And the movies have done that more than the comics. People didn't like Captain America comics for a long time, man. They thought Captain America was the lamest character anyone could ever deal with. Captain America was super lame. And the last 20 years, the MCU and the comics themselves have done a great job making Captain America a cool character. They've done a great job. Because when I was reading comics as a kid, no one liked Captain America. No one. Yeah. And like now, everybody loves him.
Yeah, Chris Evans, too. Like he was perfectly cast for Captain America.
100%. 100%.
Cool. All right. Last episode. One World, One People.
Mm-hmm.
Who is the Powerbroker in the comics?
I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. And it doesn't matter because nobody cares. But it's not Sharon. It's not Sharon Carter, 100%.
But in the MCU, or it is Sharon
It
Carter.
is. In the MCU, they made her a Powerbroker. Yeah. We'll have to see how it goes. Sharon Carter is always a very straight-laced, kind of like not a double agent, but like a secret agent kind of person, like doing what she has to do to save the world. The fact that they're making her the Powerbroker, I don't know how I feel about that. We have to just wait and see how they do it.
Okay. Maybe she's just taking credit for the Powerbroker, but no, it seems like she really is the Powerbroker.
Yeah, we'll see. She had a real dark turn, and hopefully the Captain America movie is going to come out and the shows, whatever, are going to help her come back to the light. At least I hope so.
All right. So you mentioned earlier about Captain America. Steve Rogers, I guess, at this point, at some point had a dark period where his suit was dark.
Yeah.
Okay. So that,
like if you remember at the end of the episode where John Walker comes out the bathroom.
Yeah, that's what I flashed to when you said that.
Yeah, that's the costume that Captain America in the comics wore.
Steve Rogers.
Steve Rogers made that costume. Then U.S. Agent took that costume when he became U.S. Agent. So that costume was worn by Steve Rogers and U.S. Agent, yeah.
Okay. So, and U.S. Agent is from the comics, not a made-up.
Yeah, he's definitely from the comics, 100%. Yeah.
All right. What do you think will happen with John Walker from this point out?
If the comics, if anything, he's going to be like a dark agent for the government, doing some behind the scenes stuff. He's going to definitely tangle with Captain America, the new Captain America. He's going to tangle with him and Bucky a lot. He's going to do some covert activities. But I think John Walker went heavy in the comics. John Walker went heavy against right-wing terrorists, and again, if I know the way the comics are going, the watchdogs are going to come up. And he's probably going to have to deal with that. I imagine that if they do another series or a movie and John Walker's in it, here's my deal. I think the next Captain America movie is going to be about the Watchdogs. It's going to be about racism and right-wing extremism. Mm-hmm. It's going to involve Sam Wilson. It's going to involve John Walker. I can bet you $1 million that's what they're going to do.
So Yeah, it seemed like they, the whole series long, John Walker is a huge jerk, pretty much from the get go. Like there's a very brief period of time after he's introduced where it's kind of like he's the all American boy, but that goes south pretty quickly. Like he's just a jerk throughout. It seems like they threw a real curve. Like they tried to redeem him in this last episode. So I
think John Walker's a complicated person. Even in the comic books, he's a jerk, but he's also likable at the same time.
Okay.
So I think that like John Walker's a complicated individual, and I think some people are going to love him, some people are going to hate him, but he's definitely going to be a polarizing figure, and I'm fine with that. It's going to be somebody interesting to watch.
Right.
And so I don't want them to just toss him away. I hope they really treat him with some respect, because I think he's John Walker is like the America that Americans want versus what America actually is. America is a multicultural country with different ethnicities and different cultures mingling together, working together for a common goal. We're not cowboys running down the street punching anybody we don't like. And that's the John Walker character. And I feel like as long as they have the John Walker character, they can have a good contrast between what America thinks it wants to be versus what it actually is.
Okay. All right. So you think he's going to be largely I guess a good force working for the U.S. government as U.S. agent.
100%
in the future. Okay.
Yeah, he will.
Cool. What other than that, like, where do you think this? Do you have any opinions on how this leads into, like, either they've been very cagey about whether they're going to do a second series of this show?
Yeah, man. So they called it. So here's what I'm thinking. Okay, first, before I get into that, if you look at Sam Wilson's Captain America costume, it is 100% from the comics. I can't stress to you enough. That's how the costume looked in the comic books. The wings, the shield on the back, the white stripe, everything. It's just like they did. And like at first, I was like, this is ugly. But now that I saw it in action, I was like blown away. And actually, I became very emotional when I saw Sam Wilson as Captain America. I think they did a very good job making him Captain America, and I can't wait to see him in the movies. And so,
in this show, he got his suit from.
Oh yes. In the comics, he does. In the comics, in the early when he first became Falcon, he does get that technology from Black Panther. So like this is in the 80s, man.
Okay.
So the Wakanda. So the fact that they did that, it was really cool. So that's calling back to the comics heavy. So that technology, his wings, his ability to fly, is from Wakanda, which is actually pretty cool.
Also was a bit of a callback to Pulp Fiction in my mind. With the suitcase.
When he opens the case and looks at it.
Right.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, it's kind of fun.
Which, Samuel L. Jackson is from too. So, okay. Yeah, so you were talking more about, I guess, Captain America's suit and...
Yeah, I mean, so we were talking about it becoming a series tonight, and I think so. The Marvel MCU Disney right now can do anything they want, and I think fan reaction was the reason why they announced Captain America 4. I think they could have said, "We're making a Captain America and Winter Soldier series, or we're making a movie.
Right?
Which one do you want?" And I think people were like, "We want a movie." I seriously do think that. Hey, the amount of money and technology and ability that Marvel has right now, they can sit in a room, look at tweets, look at fan engagement, and decide, okay, green light this movie. This is obviously going to make us a movie, right? Yeah. And if you think about it, they did that in a day. Like, I don't think Captain America 4 was planned. I don't think they were saying we're going to make Captain America 4 for real. I think they said we're going to see how people like the series. Mm-hmm. If enough people like Sam Wilson as Captain America, if we see some good fan engagement, we'll make a movie. And I think they saw it and they said, we'll make a movie. And I'm super happy they're making a movie because I think Anthony Mackie and Sam Wilson and Captain America as Sam Wilson as Captain America deserve a movie. I think the show did a good job, but I think a movie, the big screen, the bigger budget, is going to make that look really, really cool. I can't wait to see what they do.
Is Bucky going to be his sidekick in the movie?
I think Barnes, the Winter Soldier, will be in it. I don't know if it'll be a sidekick, but they'll be together.
Yeah. It's a pretty cool pairing in the show.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super cool. It's super cool. They did really, at the end when they're walking off and like Bucky pats him on the back. Mm-hmm. It's like it's like Bucky was right the entire series that Sam Wilson should be Captain America, and I think at the very end when Sam Wilson's walking down the street with the uniform and the shield. It just looks right to me. It looks like it almost feels like if you could put Steve Rogers in that same situation, and it would feel right too. You know what I'm saying? Like it feels good.
Right. Cool. All right. So I missed the post-credit scene on this one.
There's a post-credit scene where Sharon Carter is talking to the U.S. government, and the U.S. government gives her a pardon and also gives her a job in the government. And as she's walking off, she's on a phone call, and she says, "Hey, line up my buyers. I'm about to be able to sell all these secrets from the government." And like that's how it ends, which is kind of a shitty way for it to end.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I'm on the fence about how they treated Sharon Carter. So I just have to wait and see how they treat her. So I just have to wait and see how it feels.
Right. Okay, cool. All right, so that's it for our first episode, talking about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
I'm trying to think if there's anything we missed.
Yeah.
Can't really think of anything. The Captain America, like Sam Wilson looks really good as Captain America. To my knowledge, the Winter Soldier never gets a Wakandan arm. He doesn't get a vibranium arm from the Wakandans.
Oh,
and to my
so that's a question.
To
is Sam Wilson's Captain America suit made out of vibranium at all?
Sam Wilson's wings are 100% made of vibranium. As far as the suit, right. It probably has vibranium around it. I don't think it's bulletproof necessarily, but it definitely is like it probably is vibranium all over that thing. Yeah, 100%. The wings are 100% vibranium.
Wakanda, so
yeah. They're not gonna make it. Yeah, that's all vibranium all throughout that stuff. Yeah,
and that's what Black Panther's suit was made out of too, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what?
So
anything you missed?
And also like, yeah, it's a couple things from I missed. Like and they call the Winter Soldier the White Wolf. That to my knowledge, he is never. They might have retconned this or made a series about this. But the White Wolves are secret Wakandan agents from Wakanda. There was actually a series called Black Panther: The White Wolves. They're secret agents, and so it's cool they made Sam Wilson a White Wolf. That's kind of cool, but to my knowledge, it doesn't. They didn't do that in the comic books that much.
Okay.
What else? Other than that, they did a pretty good job with everything. I think they did a pretty good job with the series. I liked it. I think they could have been shorter or a little bit more intense. It didn't have a lot of the it didn't have a lot of the creativity that WandaVision had, but it did what it wanted to do.
It's hard to have the kind of creativity that WandaVision had.
Yeah, I think the last episode of the series, the last episode where Sam Wilson's actually acting as Captain America, was the most fun for me and the super cool. And that's why I can't wait to see the movie. Like I'll be the first person to watch it. I think they wasted a lot of time getting. No, you know what? I don't think they wasted time. I think I can't decide if they wasted time or if I was just anxious. Yeah. But now that I saw him in the outfit doing this thing, I thought it was pretty cool. So, but I can't think of any other. There's probably some other Easter eggs that I missed. So, hey, people who listen to this, if we're missing any Easter eggs you want us to talk about, please let us know. And if there's any questions about the episodes you have that you want me to look at or want us to look at, let us know as well. We'll get into that stuff.
Yeah, maybe we could do a follow-up episode on the series.
Yeah.
God, that made me think of something. I don't remember what it was now.
Does this make you want to go back to the comics at all, or do you feel good?
No, I just can't. I just can't read comics. Like I ruin it for myself.
Yeah, that's fair. But I feel like you get a pretty good comic education just watching the movies. There's a lot of comic stuff in there, so you're doing pretty good. You're not missing. You're missing a lot, but I wouldn't worry too much about it.
In a way, though, it's almost better.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yeah,
like especially with the Thanos blip thing. Like if I had,
I cannot wait to talk about that stuff with you, man. Yeah. I cannot wait to talk about Infinity War Endgame with you. So much stuff going on. There's so much stuff going on.
Okay, all right. So what do we do next? I was thinking maybe we can watch Iron Man and kind of start at the very beginning of the MCU.
Yeah, we'll do Iron Man. We can do Iron Man. That sounds good.
Okay, all right, cool. So we'll do that.
So, yeah.
If you guys want to kind of follow along, you can watch that movie before our next episode and. Listen to us talk about it.
We're on Twitter. Mike, you want to give them your Twitter handle?
I'm MIKBRE on Twitter.
And I am jslacks, JAYSLACKS at on Twitter. I was going to say at Gmail, but that doesn't make any sense.
And we'll get a show Twitter account. At
yeah, we
some
do some
point.
show notes and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Cool. All right. Well,
all right, Mike. You have a good one, man.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. I'll see you for Iron Man next time.
Yeah. Talk to you next time.